Rev up your engines!
Well, electric car maker Rivian is laying off another 6% of their workforce. You realize not making all that many vehicles, and they're laying people off to try to make it look like their stock is better. They always show profit margin, right? If you fire people, you're paying money, makes your profit margin look better than it was. I've seen many companies do this in the past, and they do it to try to get the stock price up. But of course, ultimately, does it make the product better? Usually it makes it worse when you have less people. You have a company that has problems to begin with, an electric car startup, and they start firing people. Usually that's more doom and gloom than it's a good thing. Now, last summer they laid off about 6% again then, so this is a continuing thing with the company Rivian. You know, they got all kinds of weird deals going on. They say, we're going to do this, and then that deal falls through, and then they say they got another one going. Originally, Ford was going to use them to make the platforms for their electric trucks, and that fell through. Ford's making their own. They said, we don't want to deal with these people. They all invested money. Ford, Amazon put a bunch of money into it, and for a while they'd made all this money, but then all the stock collapsed, and it's all way down now. So this myth of electrification, how it's going to be the future, everyone's going to get rich doing it, maybe isn't going to pan out that way at all. Even if you bought one, what do you do if the company goes bankrupt? If Rivian goes under and you're stuck with one of their cars, you can't get parts to get them fixed, well, too bad. So sad. That's the way that it goes, right? This stuff, it's not a viable alternative yet for most people who value their money, so I'd stay away from buying an electric car if I were you. Or buying an electric car stock for that matter. Golden State Fan says, any suggestions on what I can do for a cracked radiator that's got a very slow leak? All right, well, if they're really bad, you replace them, right? They're plastic and aluminum. You can get aftermarket radiators sometimes for as little as 99 bucks. If yours isn't that bad, go ahead and buy one. Put it in. Watch my video, how to change a radiator in your car. You'll see it's not that bad in most cars. Let's say you're really short on funds. The BARS leak, B-A-R-S, the one that mixes with all coolants, it's like 20-something bucks at places like AutoZone, O'Reilly's, right? If your coolant is clean, now if your coolant's dirty, first flush it out, then put the sealer in with coolant if it's dirty. But if it's clean, and the radiator's just leaking, put some in. I've seen that BARS seal them up for years. It's great stuff. It's great stuff. You might want to try that if you don't want to change it. Mick Gaming 123 says, I got an 06 Mitsubishi Eclipse manual tranny. It's making a whirring noise, which I assume is from the tranny because when I engage the clutch, it stops. What could it be? Pray it's a part of your clutch that's whirring. Throw out bearing something. When you step on it, the noise stops. Pray it's the clutch. Because if it isn't the clutch, it means the internals of your transmission are wearing, and that costs a fortune. Normally, it's clutch parts. And when you do change out a clutch in a car, listen to me, don't be foolish and say, I'll change one part. You buy a clutch kit that has all the clutch parts. Then when you put them in, they're all brand new. Don't just say, well, the plate's bad, I'll replace that. No, replace them all. The kits aren't all that expensive. You might spend another $80, $100 on parts, and it's going to spend a whole bunch on labor, so get the whole kit and replace everything. Cold C says, Scotty, I got a 2012 Honda Accord 4-banger, 155,000 miles. The dealer says I need a valve adjustment. The dealer says it's $500. Is it necessary? Well, the problem with the Hondas are, until very recently, almost all of them needed mechanical valve adjusting. And as it wears, the valves get out of adjustment and the car won't run right. The car's not running right, it's making noises, it's overheating or something. It can be bad valve adjustments. Now, $500 on a 4-banger is a little bit on the high side. I'd go for an independent mechanic myself if I were you. But if it doesn't make any noises, if it runs fine, doesn't overheat, you don't have a problem with after you drive it for a while, it starts running weird because the valves are tightening up. There's no saying what you could do if you were really curious yourself. There are valve lash adjustment measurements. You can get the measurements. Take the valve cover off and check a couple of them. And if they're within specs, odds are you don't even need it done in the first place. Leo Valdez says, I have an 03 Ford F-150, super reliable, but it leaks oil between the tranny and the motor. They want more than the truck's worth. Any cheaper repair? Yes, there is. That means the seal is leaking there. It's either, if it's engine oil, it's the rear main seal of the engine. If it's transmission oil, it's the front main seal of the transmission. They're all butt together inside, right? There's a company called ATP Products, Automatic Transmission Products, and they make the best sealer in the world. It's called AT205 Reseal. AT, number 205, then Reseal. I get it on Amazon. And you just pour it into the engine oil if it's the engine. You pour it in the transmission if it's the transmission seal that's leaking. If it's engine oil leaking, you put it in the engine. Transmission, you put it in the transmission. It rejuvenates rubber seals, and I've seen it stop leaks on those things. The only thing is, say it's the engine. It stops the engine oil leak. The next time you change the engine oil, you got to add another bottle in because you're changing the oil, and the sealer will be gone too. It's phenomenal stuff. AT205 Reseal. I've been using it for decades. It is the best thing out there for stopping or slowing down a lot rear main seal leaks like that. Matthew Hayslip says, I got a Lexus ES330 2005 interference engine. Timing belt's 9 years old and only has 50,000 miles. Should I change it to be safe? I wouldn't. Lexus makes excellent timing belts. My wife's Lexus is a 2001. Now, it's not an interference engine, but it's the same V6 engine. It's 2001, so it's 22 years old. The timing belt has never been changed. It's got 88,000 miles on it now. The timing belt has never been changed. I looked at it the other day. It's still perfectly good, not cracked or anything. I wouldn't worry about it. They are well built. It's the mileage that really wears those belts out. My wife's is 22 years old, and it's still got the original belt, and it still works perfectly fine. Brian Phillips says, I got a 2018 Mazda 6, not a turbo, with 70K. Do I need an oil catch can? No, you really don't. Mazdas don't particularly have carboning up problems. The one thing you'll want to do is change your oil and filter. Use synthetic oil. Change it once every 5,000 miles or once a year, and you probably will have no problems with the engine. Mazdas make good engines. They don't really have a problem with the valves carboning up or anything. I wouldn't waste my time putting an oil catch can on that vehicle. Unless you bought it used and it's burning oil because some idiot didn't change the oil throughout most of its history, then you might want to do it. But if it doesn't burn oil, it runs perfectly fine, I wouldn't waste my money. Hey, Lump says, Scotty, I'm 23 with a 4-year degree in IT. I hate sitting in the office all day. Do you think it's worth learning to be a mechanic? I heard about flat rate and tool costs. It's like anything. If you work for somebody else, they're going to be making the lion's share of the profit, and you're going to get the crumbs that they throw at you. Most people, if they're working as a mechanic for some other company, they're not going to make all that much money. And you're going to have to be working your butt off to make them a lot of money, and you get a little bit of it left, right? If you're like me and you want to learn and then start your own business, yes, that is definitely worthwhile if you're really into it, but you got to be the type of person who can take responsibility. Out of the 54 plus years I've been working on cars, 50 of them I worked for myself. You got to take responsibility. If you don't like taking responsibility, do not become a mechanic and do your own business because you got to worry about it. You got to work on it all the time. But if you don't mind, you like dealing with the stuff and making good money, go ahead, but I wouldn't advise doing it. If you're just going to learn and get a job like at a dealership or someplace where they're paying you, you probably won't be happy. It'll probably drive you nuts. Rocket Rod Lover says, Scotty, I broke a screw in my valve cover when I changed the gasket. Will it leak at the corner if the screw, or can I live with it? How can I get it out? Well, you'd have to drill it out, tap it out. It's kind of a pain in the butt, right? So here's what I'd advise you doing. I would take it off. The one you put on, I would put a good sealer around the edge, a really good sealer around the edge, and then when you tighten it down, let it dry overnight before you drive it. Well, they're testing out self-driving cars in San Francisco. Well, now the city of San Francisco is getting cold feet about these self-driving tests. The city officials in San Francisco are not calling for a slower and a more controlled expansion of these autonomous vehicle tests in San Francisco because they're blocking traffic, they're hampering emergency services. So, even in the ultra-liberal city of San Francisco, they're saying maybe these autonomous tests in our city should be going on somewhere else. They're creating problems here. See, the problem with those machines is generally when they're confused, they shut themselves down. So the stupid things will stop in the middle of an intersection, right? And they'll just sit there, stopped in the middle of the intersection, blocking traffic. They're confused. They don't know what to do. Now, I understand it's a safety flaw, but basically, it turns out that when they're confused, these autonomous driving systems are acting like horrible drivers, like the ones you see that the light's green, you got to honk at them to make them go through because they're sitting there either looking at their phone or twiddling their thumbs. It's like they become the worst drivers in the world instead of the best autonomous ones. And even San Francisco now is saying, hey, we better lighten up on these things. They're creating a big problem for us here. They want this modern technology, but they're realizing it comes with a lot of flaws. And now they're rethinking, allowing it to have open range in San Francisco. They want to curtail it more. And I don't blame them. I've been to San Francisco a bunch of times. Let me tell you, it's a traffic jam insanity downtown to begin with. You add vehicles that are blocking it up, it's going to be even worse. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.